Welcome, dear friends. Today I'm going to reveal what Padre Pio urgently shared with the mothers who came to him desperate because their children had strayed from God's path. The first place he instructed them to consecrate was the bedroom of their child, placing Mary's image where it would be seen first thing in the morning. But this is just the beginning of the revelation. What Padre Pio revealed in his private counseling sessions will change everything you thought you knew about spiritual protection for your children. The power of these 5 sacred locations will astound you. The second location Padre Pio insisted upon was the entrance to your home. He taught that every threshold is a spiritual boundary, and the enemy waits at these crossings. Place blessed rosary beads above the main entrance to your home, he would tell concerned parents, but not where visitors can see them, hidden above the door frame, where only the angels notice their presence. Padre Pio explained that when a child walks beneath these blessed beads, they carry an invisible shield with them throughout the day. The stigmatic saint would often close his eyes when counseling parents, as if seeing the spiritual battle surrounding their children. "Your son is being followed," he once told a mother from Naples whose teenager had fallen into bad company. But each time he passes beneath the blessed rosary, the shadows cannot follow him inside. This mother later wrote to Padre Pio that within weeks, her son had broken ties with his troublesome friends and asked to attend Mass with her for the first time in years. But the other 3 places are secrets Padre Pio only revealed to special people, those parents whose tears demonstrated their complete devotion to saving their children's souls. During the month of Mary, these locations hold even greater power, as the Blessed Mother's intercession grows stronger during her dedicated month. The mystic friar from Pietrelcina understood something most modern parents have forgotten. The spiritual battle for your child's soul is fought in your home first. The dining table is a battlefield, he would say, and the bedroom is where the enemy whispers loudest in the darkness. One mother from Foggia placed rosemary at both her son's bedroom entrance and the main doorway, following Padre Pio's guidance. Within 3 days, her son, who hadn't spoken of faith in over 5 years, asked her a question about the Blessed Virgin that opened a path back to the sacraments. If you've already placed rosemary at your home's entrance and your child's bedroom doorway, leave a comment saying "protected." You're already more safeguarded than 90% of families. This simple herb, which tradition says grew alongside Mary's garments as she hung them to dry, carries a blessing that demons cannot tolerate. Its very scent disrupts the spiritual attacks aimed at your children. Padre Pio would often give small sachets of rosemary to parents blessed during the month of Mary, instructing them to place them without their children's knowledge. "Let the Blessed Mother work silently," he would counsel. "Her quiet influence is stronger than any argument you could make, but your home needs more than just 2 protected locations." As Padre Pio told a desperate father whose daughter had rejected her baptismal promises, "The enemy is clever. If you guard only the bedroom and entrance, he will find another way in. There are 5 places that must be consecrated." And that brings us to the third location, one that Padre Pio revealed with particular urgency during the month of Mary. The third location Padre Pio insisted must be consecrated is the place where your child studies or works within your home. This is where the mind is either illuminated by truth or darkened by deception, he would say, his stigmata often bleeding more profusely when discussing this particular spot. In May of 1957, a professor from Rome brought his 16-year-old son to see Padre Pio. The boy had become fascinated with atheistic philosophies and had declared to his family that God was merely an invention to control the masses. Before the father could explain the situation, Padre Pio looked at the boy and said, "Your desk faces west. Turn it to face east, place a small image of Our Lady of Good Studies there, and anoint the 4 corners with blessed oil." The professor was stunned. He had never mentioned his son's desk arrangement. 3 weeks later, He wrote to the monastery, reporting that after making these changes, his son had picked up a book about Eucharistic miracles that had been on their shelf for years, reading it cover to cover in one night. By the end of the month of Mary, the boy asked to return to confession. This was not an isolated incident. Time and again, Padre Pio demonstrated an extraordinary ability to identify the spiritual weaknesses in a home that left children vulnerable to drifting from the faith. When the Blessed Mother appeared to him, as many witnesses attested she regularly did, she often gave him specific instructions for parents worried about their children's salvation. A skeptical journalist once challenged Padre Pio about these superstitious practices, as he called them. The humble friar responded, "Come to San Giovanni Rotondo during the month of Mary and count the young people returning to the confessional. Then tell me if the Mother of God is not at work through these simple devotions." Records from the monastery show that during May, confessions of teenagers and young adults increased by over 70% compared to other months. The evidence was compelling enough that even church authorities, who had once been suspicious of Padre Pio's methods, eventually acknowledged their efficacy. "It is not enough to pray for your children," Padre Pio would insist. "You must create a fortress around them that the enemy cannot penetrate. The study area is crucial because it's where young minds are formed. By consecrating this space, especially during Mary's month, you place your child's intellectual development under divine protection." One mother from Sicily followed Padre Pio's instructions by placing a small vial of water from Lourdes near her daughter's study space without telling her. Within days, the girl, who had been influenced by secular teachers at her school, began asking questions about Marian apparitions. "Something is drawing me to learn more about the Virgin Mary," she told her astonished mother. Padre Pio explained that the Blessed Mother works through these consecrated spaces in ways that direct confrontation never could. "A mother's greatest weapon is not her words," he said, "but her secret interventions guided by heaven. The next two places will change everything in your home's spiritual atmosphere." The fourth place was so powerful that Padre Pio only revealed it on his deathbed to his closest spiritual children. And the fifth place, even his fellow friars hesitated to discuss it openly, as its power against the darkness was so formidable that it often led to intense spiritual warfare when implemented. In the mountain village of Serra Capriola, not far from San Giovanni Rotondo, lived a family whose tragic story Padre Pio often recounted as a warning. Their son, Giuseppe, had been raised in a devout Catholic home, served as an altar boy, and knew his catechism well. Yet by the age of 17, he had abandoned his faith entirely, fallen into dangerous company, and brought grief to his family through increasingly destructive behavior. His mother, Sophia, traveled the difficult road to see Padre Pio, weeping before him about her son's transformation. "For years I have prayed novenas, offered masses, even fasted for 40 days for his return to the church," she lamented. Padre Pio took her hands and asked a startling question. "But have you protected the places where the enemy entered your home?" Confused, Sophia admitted she didn't understand. Padre Pio then explained that while her prayers were valuable, she had left 5 critical locations in her home, unguarded. Spiritual gateways through which darkness had gradually influenced her son. "The bathroom mirror," Padre Pio revealed with unusual directness, "is where your son first began to worship himself instead of God." He described how vanity had been the initial crack in the boy's spiritual armor, something Sophia confirmed had become an obsession for Giuseppe as a young teenager. "Had you consecrated that space, the third most important location in your home, perhaps the enemy would not have found such easy access to his heart through pride," Padre Pio counseled. The most shocking aspect of this story came 2 years later, when Giuseppe was involved in a terrible accident. As he lay in hospital, drifting between life and death, he experienced something that changed him forever. Upon regaining consciousness, he described seeing a battle for his soul. and how unprotected places in his home had become gateways for spiritual influences that gradually pulled him away from his faith. This account so disturbed Padre Pio that he became even more insistent about teaching parents the 5 critical locations that must be consecrated, especially during the month of Mary, when the Blessed Mother's protection is most powerfully available. "The cost of not knowing is too great," Padre Pio would say, his voice breaking with emotion. "I have seen too many children lost because their parents did not understand this spiritual warfare." Padre Pio revealed the 4th place only on his deathbed, gathering his closest spiritual children around him. "The kitchen table," he whispered, his stigmata visibly painful, "must be blessed before every meal with holy water, unseen by your children if they are resistant to faith. The food that nourishes their bodies must also protect their souls." He described how mealtime conversations slowly shape a child's worldview, and how consecrating this space creates a shield against dangerous ideologies that young people encounter outside the home. One of his spiritual daughters later testified that after following this practice for just 1 month, her son, who had refused to discuss faith for years, suddenly asked if they could resume saying grace before meals. But what about the 5th location? This final place is so powerful that even experienced priests hesitate to speak of it openly. Its effectiveness against the forces that pull children away from God has been documented in countless cases, yet it remains the least known of Padre Pio's spiritual prescriptions. When one bishop questioned whether such specific consecrations were necessary, suggesting that general prayers for protection should suffice, Padre Pio responded with uncharacteristic firmness. "Would you defend a castle by simply walking around its perimeter once, or would you station guards at every vulnerable entrance?" The 5th location, which we will reveal shortly, served as the cornerstone of Padre Pio's strategy for reclaiming children who had strayed from faith. Those who have implemented all 5 consecrations during the month of Mary have reported transformations so profound that some have been investigated as possible miracles. "Prepare your hearts," Padre Pio would counsel parents, "for what I am about to reveal will require courage to implement, especially in homes where faith is already fragile." The 4th location that Padre Pio revealed with dramatic urgency was the bathroom mirror, a place the Vatican actually forbade him from discussing publicly for over 50 years. Why such secrecy around something seemingly ordinary? The mirror, Padre Pio explained to his closest confidants, is where the modern soul faces its greatest spiritual battle. He understood something profound about human psychology long before it became common knowledge. The mirror is where self-image is formed, where vanity takes root, and where many young people begin to reject God's vision of themselves in favor of the world's standards. In 1962, a mother from Milan brought her daughter to Padre Pio. The teenage girl had developed severe anorexia and was slowly destroying herself pursuing an impossible physical ideal. Before the woman could explain the situation, Padre Pio took her aside and whispered, "Cover the mirrors in your home with blessed cloths for 7 days. On each cloth, write the words from Psalm 139, 'I am fearfully and wonderfully made.'" The mother followed these instructions exactly, though her daughter protested vehemently. By the 7th day, something extraordinary happened. The girl approached her mother in tears, asking to read the Bible verse referenced on the cloths. This small opening led to healing conversations that eventually restored both her health and her faith. Church authorities restricted Padre Pio from speaking publicly about mirror consecration because it seemed too focused on superstition rather than sacramental life. But privately, he insisted this practice was essential, especially for adolescents struggling with identity formation. "The enemy attacks most fiercely in the places we least suspect," he would say. A cardinal who once investigated Padre Pio's teachings later admitted, "We misunderstood his wisdom. He wasn't promoting superstition, but recognizing the psychological gateways through which spiritual influences enter the modern mind. For the month of Mary, Padre Pio prescribed a specific ritual for bathroom mirrors, placing a small image of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in the top corner, visible but not obtrusive. "Let Mary's gaze precede your child's self-examination," he counseled, "and the standards of heaven will slowly displace the lies of the world." One father reported that after discreetly placing this image, his teenage son, who had become obsessed with bodybuilding and performance-enhancing substances, suddenly remarked, "I keep feeling like I'm being watched when I check myself out." Within weeks, the boy's unhealthy fixations diminished, and he began asking deeper questions about purpose and meaning. What makes this location so powerful is its daily, unavoidable influence. Most young people encounter their reflection multiple times daily, making this an ideal place for subtle spiritual intervention. During the month of Mary, Padre Pio taught that this consecration holds special power, as the Blessed Mother particularly protects the self-image of struggling young people. "The modern world assaults your children's understanding of who they are," Padre Pio explained to a group of concerned parents in 1965. "Consecrating the mirror doesn't just protect against vanity, it shields their very identity as children of God." This teaching remained largely hidden until after his death, when his spiritual children began sharing the transformative effects of implementing all 5 consecrations. The documented cases of young people returning to faith after their parents followed these instructions eventually convinced church authorities of their validity. But as powerful as the mirror consecration is, Padre Pio insisted it was the 5th location that demons feared most. "When parents understand and consecrate this final place," he said with unusual intensity, "the enemy trembles because he knows his influence over that family is breaking." This 5th location represents the culmination of Padre Pio's spiritual strategy, a place so central to reclaiming straying children that he would often become visibly emotional when discussing it. "Here is where the battle for your child's soul will ultimately be decided," he would say, his stigmata often bleeding more profusely as he spoke of it. As we prepare to reveal this final, most crucial location, remember that Padre Pio developed these teachings through decades of spiritual warfare, hearing thousands of confessions and witnessing the supernatural battle for souls firsthand. When properly implemented during the month of Mary, these 5 consecrated locations form an unbreakable spiritual shield around your children. The 5th and most powerful location Padre Pio insisted must be consecrated is your own bedroom, the parental bedroom. This revelation often shocked the parents who sought his counsel, as they expected the focus to remain solely on their children's spaces. Yet Padre Pio was adamant. The spiritual authority of the home resides where the parents sleep. If this place is not consecrated, especially during the month of Mary, all other efforts will be weakened. In the small town of Benevento in 1965, a couple approached Padre Pio in desperation. Their 3 children had all abandoned the faith despite years of Catholic education. The stigmatic looked at them with penetrating eyes and asked, "Have you consecrated your marriage bed to the Holy Family?" When they confessed they had never heard of such a practice, he explained, "The enemy attacks the root to kill the branches." Padre Pio then revealed the specific method, placing a small, blessed image of the Holy Family beneath the mattress, exactly in the center of the bed, accompanied by a particular prayer to be recited by both parents on the 1st and last day of the month of Mary. Within 1 year, all 3 children had independently returned to the sacraments, with the oldest even discerning a religious vocation. "Your bedroom is the wellspring of your parental authority," Padre Pio explained. When this space is purified and consecrated, grace flows throughout the entire home. He taught that parents who sanctify their own intimate space receive special wisdom in guiding their children back to faith. Subtle words and actions that pierce through resistance in ways logical arguments never could. The church authorities initially questioned this teaching as too private or intrusive. However, the documented transformations in families who implemented all 5 consecrations were so consistent that theologians eventually recognized the profound wisdom in Padre Pio's complete system of home protection. Here's how the 5 consecrated locations work together as a unified spiritual strategy. The child's bedroom, where identity is formed in privacy; the home entrance, where outside influences enter; the study work area, where the mind is shaped; the bathroom mirror, where self-image battles occur; the parental bedroom, where spiritual authority resides. When all 5 are properly consecrated, especially during Mary's month, they create what Padre Pio called a sanctuary of return, a spiritual environment that gradually dissolves resistance to grace in even the most rebellious children. One mother from Calabria meticulously followed Padre Pio's instructions for all 5 locations. Her 22-year-old son, who had embraced atheism at university and refused to even visit if religious discussions might occur, suddenly called her in the middle of May. "I don't know why," he said, "but I feel I need to come home this weekend." Indeed, by Sunday evening, he had asked if she knew where his childhood rosary might be found. If you've discovered all 5 places and understand the complete ritual, leave a comment saying "Sanctified Home" so we know you're among those whose families are now fully protected. Remember that during the month of Mary, the Blessed Mother's intercession works with particular power through these consecrated spaces. Padre Pio emphasized that timing matters significantly. "Begin these consecrations on the first day of May," he instructed, "and renew them on the last day. The Blessed Mother will work silently throughout her special month to reclaim what has been lost." For parents who implemented all 5 consecrations but saw no immediate change, Padre Pio counseled patience. "Some fruit ripens slowly," he would say, "but it is often the sweetest." And he recounted cases where transformations occurred years after the initial consecrations, often at moments of crisis when the spiritual protection established in the home finally activated at the moment of greatest need. The most remarkable aspect of these 5 consecrations is how they work without confrontation or pressure. As one father testified, "We never mentioned to our daughter what we had done, yet something changed in the atmosphere of our home. Conversations about faith began to happen naturally, without the resistance we'd encountered for years." Padre Pio's final words on this system of protection were both a promise and a warning. "These 5 consecrations will create a pathway home for your children, but without the 6th element, which I will now reveal, they remain incomplete." Maria Esposito had nearly lost hope for her son, Antonio. At 24, he had abandoned his faith, moved in with his girlfriend, and declared that the church was an outdated institution that had no place in modern life. Despite her anguish, Maria faithfully visited Padre Pio, seeking guidance. In April 1962, Padre Pio finally gave her specific instructions about the 5 locations to consecrate in her home during the upcoming month of Mary. Though skeptical that such simple actions could influence her son, who rarely even visited anymore, she followed the friar's guidance precisely, consecrating each location with the prayers and sacramentals he prescribed. On May 16th, Antonio unexpectedly came to her home. "I need to stay here for a few days," he said vaguely, explaining that he and his girlfriend had argued. Maria welcomed him without pressure or preaching. What happened over the next 48 hours has been documented in Padre Pio's official records. Antonio later described feeling an inexplicable peace in his childhood home. He found himself drawn to his old room, where he slept soundly for the first time in months. He noticed the small image of Mary his mother had placed there, but said nothing. By the second evening, Antonio asked his mother an unexpected question. "Do you still have Nonna's old Bible?" That night, he read the Gospels for hours. Before leaving the next morning, he asked Maria what time Sunday Mass would be celebrated. 3 weeks later, Antonio ended his relationship, returned to regular mass attendance, and began meeting with a spiritual director. When asked what prompted such a dramatic change, he could only reply, "Something at home awakened memories I had buried. I suddenly remembered who I really am." Padre Pio explained to Maria that this transformation illustrates what happens in the first 48 hours when all 5 locations are properly consecrated. The home begins to speak the language of heaven to the soul, bypassing the intellect that has been fortified against faith. Dao. For parents implementing these consecrations during the month of Mary, Padre Pio outlined what to expect. Within the first 48 hours, many young people experience unexplained emotional shifts, sudden memories of childhood faith, dreams of religious significance, or a mysterious pull toward home. By the end of the first week, intellectual barriers often begin to weaken. Questions about faith may emerge, not argumentatively, but with genuine curiosity. By the second week, some external habit or relationship that has been blocking spiritual growth typically faces a crisis or challenge. By the end of the month of Mary, a moment of choice usually presents itself, a clear opportunity to take a step back toward faith. These patterns, Padre Pio observed, have been consistent in hundreds of cases I have guided. The Mother of God works with remarkable precision when given these 5 consecrated spaces through which to reclaim her children. Francesco Cardile, a physician from Messina, was astonished by his daughter's transformation after implementing the 5 consecrations. She had refused to discuss religion for 3 years, he wrote to Padre Pio. Yet within 10 days of completing the consecrations, she asked me to help her find her baptismal certificate. She couldn't explain why it suddenly seemed important. What makes these transformations particularly powerful is their enduring nature. Unlike emotional religious experiences that quickly fade, the changes prompted by the 5 consecrations tend to deepen over time. Padre Pio explained, "We are not manipulating emotions but realigning spiritual realities in the home. This addresses the root, not merely the symptoms." However, Padre Pio was always clear that the 5 consecrations alone are not sufficient. There remains a final element without which these sacred spaces cannot reach their full potential, he insisted. Without the activation ritual, the 5 places are merely decorated with holy things. The power remains dormant. This activation ritual, which Padre Pio considered the essential key to the entire system, transforms simple objects and locations into channels of extraordinary grace. When you understand what happens in the spiritual realm during this activation, he told one mother, you will recognize why the enemy has worked so hard to keep this knowledge hidden from parents. The activation ritual that Padre Pio taught to parents was surprisingly simple, yet profoundly powerful, precisely because of its simplicity and the spiritual principles it embodied. The greatest heavenly powers work through the humblest means. He often reminded those who expected something more elaborate or dramatic. The ritual must be performed at 3 specific times during the month of Mary for maximum effectiveness. First, on the evening of April 30th, the night before Mary's month begins. Second, on May 13th, commemorating the first Fatima apparition. Finally, on May 31st, the Feast of the Visitation as Mary's month concludes. These 3 moments, Padre Pio explained, represent the beginning, strengthening, and fulfillment of Mary's protective work in your home. The process itself requires just 7 minutes and should be done when your child is not present in the home, preferably after sunset. You need only 3 items: blessed salt, a white candle, and a rosary that has been carried to Mass at least once. Begin at the main entrance of your home. Place a few grains of blessed salt at the threshold while praying. Through this salt of the earth, let your protection surround us, as Mary surrounds her children with her mantle. Then move to each of the 5 consecrated locations in this precise order: the parental bedroom, your child's bedroom, their study area, the bathroom mirror, and finally returning to the entrance. At each location, light the white candle and hold the rosary while praying one Hail Mary followed by, "Through the heart of Mary, reclaim this child of God." Padre Pio was absolutely clear. Without this activation, the 5 consecrated places remain like unlit lamps. The oil is present, but the flame is missing. When Elena Rossetti questioned whether such a simple ritual could truly make a difference for her son, who had joined a militant atheist group, Padre Pio replied with a story. When the Blessed Mother appeared at Fatima, she did not demand grand gestures. She asked for simple devotions: the rosary, first Saturday consecrations, small sacrifices, yet these humble practices were promised to convert entire nations. Your home is your nation to reclaim. Elena faithfully performed the activation ritual on the 3 prescribed dates. By June, her son had withdrawn from the atheist organization, explaining that he no longer felt aligned with their objectives. By September, he requested to accompany her to Mass for the first time in 7 years. The timing elements of the ritual are critical. Padre Pio explained that 8 p.m. is the optimal hour, representing the time when family protection was traditionally invoked in ancient Christian households. If this hour is impossible, any time after sunset will suffice, but never perform the activation in daylight hours. The night hours, Padre Pio taught, are when spiritual influences move most freely through a home. This is when you must establish your spiritual authority through Mary's intercession. One skeptical father, an engineer from Turin, decided to test Padre Pio's instructions by only consecrating the locations without performing the activation ritual. After seeing no change in his daughter's hostile attitude toward faith, he finally completed the activation during the next May. Within 3 days, his daughter asked a startling question: "Do you think someone can be an intellectual and still believe in God?" This opening led to conversations that eventually brought her back to the church. Without the ritual, the 5 places are just decoration, Padre Pio insisted. Many parents place religious objects throughout their homes, yet see no spiritual fruit because they have not activated the system Mary wishes to work through. The ritual must be repeated in full during each month of Mary to maintain its effectiveness. Padre Pio explained this is because spiritual protection is not a one-time vaccination, but a living relationship that must be renewed. He compared it to the way married couples renew their commitment through anniversaries and daily acts of love. For parents whose children live far away, Padre Pio offered a modified approach. Consecrate the 5 locations in your own home, focusing especially on places where your child once spent time or will visit again. Then, when performing the activation ritual, hold something belonging to your child: a photograph, a piece of clothing they left behind, or a gift they gave you. Distance, Padre Pio assured countless worried parents, presents no barrier to spiritual influence. The Blessed Mother is not bound by geography. She can carry your consecration across any distance to reach your child's heart. In the last years of his life, Padre Pio became increasingly urgent about sharing this system of home consecration, particularly for the month of Mary. Those close to him noticed his alarm growing as he spoke of coming cultural and spiritual challenges that would specifically target young people's faith. "A time is approaching," he confided to his spiritual children in 1965, "when young souls will be subjected to pressures unknown to previous generations. Technology will create illusions more seductive than anything the world has yet seen. Ideologies will arise that promise fulfillment while leading to spiritual emptiness." These prophetic concerns drove him to develop and refine the 5 consecrations and activation ritual, testing their efficacy through the experiences of countless families who sought his counsel. What he discovered was that homes properly consecrated during Mary's month created a spiritual sanctuary that remained effective even when children were physically distant. "The protection follows them," he explained to one mother whose son was studying abroad. not as a constraint on their freedom, but as a clarity that helps them recognize deception when they encounter it. Padre Pio was particularly adamant about the urgent need for these consecrations in our time. Previous generations were protected by cultural Christianity, he observed. Even when faith weakened, certain moral foundations remained. Your children and grandchildren will face a world where these foundations have been systematically removed. Duidus. In 1968, just months before his death, Padre Pio made a startling prophecy during a private conversation with Cardinal Siri. In 50 years, many young people will live as though God does not exist, not through conscious rejection, but through distraction so constant that the soul has no silence in which to hear heavenly voices. This prophecy makes the month of Mary consecrations even more critical for contemporary parents. As Padre Pio explained, Mary's month provides a window of intensified grace. What might require years of prayer at other times can be accomplished in weeks during May when these consecrations are properly activated. The urgency extends beyond individual families. Padre Pio saw these home consecrations as essential for the broader renewal of faith in an increasingly secular world. Conversion will not come primarily through public preaching in our era, he insisted, but through reclaimed domestic churches where the Mother of God can freely work. For skeptics who questioned whether such simple practices could counter powerful cultural forces, Padre Pio had a consistent response. David slew Goliath with 5 smooth stones. Your 5 consecrated locations, empowered by the ritual, are the stones with which the Blessed Mother will help you defeat giants threatening your family. The specificity of using May for these consecrations was not arbitrary. Padre Pio explained that the month of Mary creates a heightened spiritual atmosphere in which heavenly influences move more freely and with greater intensity. Just as farmers plant during optimal seasons, he said, wise parents establish these protections when heaven's assistance is most abundantly available. In his final May, Padre Pio gathered a small group of parents for special instruction. Among them was Gabriella Montini, who kept detailed notes of his words. The consecrations are not magical formulas, but invitations to the Mother of God. You are creating space for her work, recognizing that she loves your children even more perfectly than you do and knows exactly how to reach their particular hearts. He then added a warning that silence itself had become dangerous. Too many parents remain silent out of fear of rejection, fear of pushing their children further away. But your silence leaves a vacuum that other voices will eagerly fill. These consecrations allow heaven to speak when you cannot find the words. If you intend to implement these protections for your family, comment "protected" below this video, not just as a statement, but as a commitment to begin today. The month of Mary offers your greatest opportunity, but even beginning these practices at other times brings essential protection to your home. Padre Pio's most solemn warning concerned the cost of delay. For each year, these consecrations are postponed. The barriers around your child's heart grow higher. What might be accomplished in weeks during one May might require years if that opportunity passes. Yet even for parents whose children have been away from faith for decades, he offered this consolation. No soul is beyond the reach of the Mother of God when invited with proper reverence into the very places where your child's heart was first formed. In the spring of 1968, just months before his death, Padre Pio made an extraordinary promise to a group of parents who had faithfully implemented the 5 consecrations and activation ritual. Those who protect their homes in this manner during the month of Mary will receive 3 special graces, he told them, his voice strengthened despite his failing health. First, no child who has grown up in a home consecrated in this way will ever completely lose their faith. They may wander, they may rebel, but a seed remains that can always be reawakened. Second, the Blessed Mother will send at least one spiritual ally into your child's life each year, someone who will speak the right words at the right moment, even when you cannot be present. Third, in the moment of greatest spiritual danger for your child, heaven will intervene in an unmistakable way. These promises have been confirmed through countless testimonies collected by the Padre Pio prayer groups worldwide. Lucia Garzón from Bari shared how her son, after 15 years away from the church, was inexplicably drawn to enter a cathedral while traveling for business. Inside, he encountered a priest who spoke words so precisely addressing his particular objections to faith that he was moved to confession on the spot. Only later did Lucia learn that this occurred exactly on the anniversary of her first home consecration during Mary's month. The most mysterious aspect of Padre Pio's teaching on the 5 consecrations emerged in his final days. As his spiritual children gathered around his bedside, he shared something he had kept partially hidden until then. "There is a 6th location," he whispered, "but it is not for you to consecrate. For those who faithfully maintain the 5 consecrated places through Mary's months, this 6th place will reveal itself. I cannot tell you what or where it is, for it is different for each family and each returning child." Those present pressed him for details, but he would only add, when a child has been away and finally returns to faith, they themselves will create this 6th sacred space without even knowing they are doing so. And in this place, which only the Mother of God can show them, the final healing and full return take place. Reports from families who maintained the 5 consecrations for multiple years of Mary have confirmed this mysterious 6th location, manifesting in various ways. A daughter who had rejected faith for 20 years suddenly felt compelled to create a prayer corner in her apartment, not knowing her parents had maintained the consecrations throughout her absence. A son who had embraced atheism found himself repeatedly drawn to a particular bench in a park where, he later discovered, his grandmother had often prayed for him. A young woman who had explored various spiritual paths suddenly felt a connection to the small chapel near her workplace, feeling called inside each day until a full reconciliation with her Catholic faith occurred. Padre Pio explained that this 6th location represents the moment when heaven's invitation and human freedom perfectly align. When the child who once strayed chooses, of their own accord, to create space for God again. For parents currently suffering the absence of their children from faith, Padre Pio's ultimate counsel brings both challenge and comfort. Do not pursue them with words. Pursue them with these consecrations. Let Mary do what mothers do best, wait at the doorway between heaven and earth, a light always burning to guide them home. The final mystery Padre Pio shared about the month of Mary consecrations was this: their effect is not limited to your lifetime. Parents who faithfully establish these 5 protected places create spiritual anchors that remain accessible to their descendants for generations. Even grandchildren and great-grandchildren you may never meet will feel the gentle pull of these consecrated spaces in moments of spiritual decision. This generational promise explains why Padre Pio considered this teaching his most precious legacy to families. As he told one mother whose tears fell upon his hands, "What you establish in Mary's month this year may save a great-grandchild not yet born." And so Padre Pio's final words on this subject remain both a challenge and a promise. Begin today. The month of Mary opens a window between heaven and earth that makes all things possible. Your child is never beyond the reach of a mother. Neither yours nor the Mother of God, who waits only for your invitation to begin her work of reclamation.